Hello everybody. We are going to be talking about how to divide one of these foam discs into an equal number of segments. By placing some guidelines on the foam, it's a lot easier to place your fabric more evenly for an ornament, say like this. Placing marks on your foam at equal intervals, it's a lot easier to make an ornament like this where you have to place a certain number of pieces on the ornament and you need them at equal distances apart from each other. So for instance, this Prairie point pinwheel, it uses 12 pieces of fabric. Some people like to make them with 16. So today I'm going to be showing you how you can easily divide this disc into 12 or 16 different sections. And this particular method of doing this will also work if you have a different brand, because this foam disc is a soft foam and it's really easy to put pins into. This is carried in the Ornament Girl supply shop and is included in Ornament Girl kits from time to time. Now the ones that you can get elsewhere sometimes, which you can get at hobby stores here and there, they are a little more dense and they're also just a little bit bigger than the ones that are in the Ornament Girl shop. So this method that I'm going to show you will work on either of these or any other that you have. So it's the same method, it's just a matter of getting a small strip of paper. So you will need a long strip of very narrow paper. I usually cut mine somewhere between 1/8 of an inch wide and 1/4 of an inch wide. And this is what you're going to be wrapping around the circumference of your disc, and then you can divide it into equal segments very easily. So make sure the strip of paper you cut is indeed long enough to wrap all the way around, and then you can get going. So I know that my long strip that I have here is too long for the circumference of my disc, so I'm going to go ahead and pin it to the edge here. Just right on the edge, right where there's like a very thin line, you can see a mold line from the manufacturer. So I'm going to go ahead and pin it right directly on that and then just carefully begin to wrap it around the edge of the disc. Now these discs are really narrow here, so I like to pin it a few times as I go along just because I do not want it slipping around. So as I go wrapping it, I'm going to pin it every now and then because I don't want it slipping. And then as you come along here to the end, you can either just bend it or you can take your scissors and snip it off just where it meets that first end. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and snip it off. So I have my scissors here, and right where it meets that other end, I'm going to go ahead and snip it. Alright, so now I know my narrow paper here is the exact length that it takes to go around my disc. So this is going to be really easy now. I'm just going to go ahead and fold it in half. So I'm just matching up those two edges, and then I'm going to crease it here. Okay, so it's folded in half, and now I'm going to go ahead and fold it in half again. Alright, so I've got creases on here, and when I open it up, it's hard to see on camera, but I will mark them with a pen. But it is now folded in such a way where there are 3 fold lines here. Now, I do realize we are not wanting 4 segments, we're actually wanting 12 or 16, but you can get there just starting with this segmented 4. And the reason that I only like to do 4 is because if you take this little disc and you try to draw 12 lines on here, lines that divide it in, I mean, you are going to have, that's going to be kind of a mess. So I just don't like drawing all 12 lines on there. I think it's just sort of overkill and not really necessary. So I just come around, I start pinning it here on one end, I come around and pin it again, once again, all the way around. I usually pin it right on the lines just because I think that that's a good distance to go before you do another pin. So I'm working my way around, and I'm only going to be marking these 4, and I really don't need to pin it here at the end because I'm going to be marking directly on the foam. Ooh, there we go. Right where it begins, and now where each of those little marks are. You can do it on one side, or I like to do it on both. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and unpin this. And one reason why I like to do 4 is because one side of this disc has the center point marked right here with a hole, but the other side doesn't. So these 4 marks, when I connect those, it's going to give me the exact center point on this side of my disc. So let's go ahead and do that. So you can take your measuring tape and just align it with one of those marks that you made and pin it in place. So see how it's just right beside that mark. And I'm going to bring it straight across the face of this disc to the opposite mark. Now make sure that you're laying it across there really straight. You don't want it sort of curved over. You want it to come straight from that mark directly over the little hump on the disc, and then matching up here where it's right beside the mark that's on the other side. And you can pin it in place once again. That way it's not going to go anywhere. Make sure it's straight. Sometimes it likes to slip away, so I like to just hold it in place while I draw my line from one side down to the other side. All right, now I'm going to remove this tape measure, and I'm going to do the same thing perpendicular so that I will have 2 crisscrossing marks. So align it here on the edge, pin it in place, bring it straight down, straight across. Match it up with the opposite mark. Okay, is it a straight shot? I'm going to hold it again so it doesn't slip around while I draw my line. There we go. Now I have to admit, even though there is a mark here on the other side, or a hole indicating the center, I still like to carry my 4 lines, or my 2 crisscrossing lines, over onto this side as well. So I'm going to do that really fast before we move along. So now I have sufficiently marked 4 quadrants on both sides of my foam. And starting with 4 makes it so easy, because now I can just go in here and on the edge I can take each one of these segments and divide it into the additional number that I need it to have. So if I'm looking to have an ornament that's going to have 12 pieces on it, then I want to go into each segment and add an additional 2 marks. And you can just eyeball these. You just go along the edge and say, okay, where is it about 1/3 of the way? I'm thinking it's going to be, let's see, probably about right here and about right here. Now you can certainly go in and like measure if you want to, or you can take another little strip of paper and fold it into thirds and then pin it. I just think that that's kind of overkill. I don't think it's really needed. So as long as you have these main marks done, just go in to each of those segments, add a couple little marks that are about the same distance apart, and you're good to go. So I can just continue to go to each of these quadrants here and make a couple extra marks. If you're off a little bit, no problem, just fix it. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and do that all the way around. Now if I wanted this ornament to have 16 pieces of fabric on it and I needed 16 marks, I'm going to go over here to the edge and I'm going to divide it in half. So between here and here, those long marks, where is about the approximate middle? About right there. And now in each of those halves, I'll make an additional mark. And now I have divided this one quadrant into 4 sections. And I would just continue doing that in each and every quadrant. And that would give me 16 marks along the edge of my disc. And like I said, I really don't like to carry all of these lines down to the middle. I find that if you do that, it's just sort of visual overkill, and you almost lose the exact pinpointed center because you have so many lines converging here in the middle. It just is overwhelming. So personally, I really like to just keep the 4 and then just come along the edge and make those additional marks as needed. So remember, if you are looking to place 12 pieces on your disc and you need 12 marks, just do it into quadrants, divide each quadrant into thirds. If you're wanting to have 16 marks, then divide it into quadrants and then divide each quadrant into fourths. So there you go. I hope you find that helpful.